things that you can do to continue to build financially outside of, hey, I got 7 roofs on the books this week.
Right.
Like, what can you do to better position yourself, your family, for the long term, to make money, to have resources, and build an empire?
We're not going to be young forever. We're not going to be on these roofs forever. We really got to plan for this kind of stuff.
Welcome back to another episode of Mission Control Podcast. We've got a beachside chat with my guy, Eric Reno, from Paramount Roofing. Listen, we're going to talk about some shit that nobody else is talking about. And I know every content creator says that. And look, I'm just a guy that does marketing. I know some smart people. Eric's one of them. So I wanted to let him impart some of his knowledge on some things you might not be thinking about with you today. Thanks for tuning in. Appreciate the team over at Roofing for help making this happen. CRM, roof quotes, instant roof quotes. Anything you need, clean and pristine proposals. They'll give you your customers or prospects no choice but to buy from you. Click the link down below. What's up, E?
What's up, brother?
Yo, listen, we got the sand between our toes. Actually, we're really hoping not to have sand between our toes. That gritty feeling, there's nothing worse than that for me. Besides seeing marketing companies take advantage of people, but that's going to be for another topic for another day.
Absolutely.
So we were having a conversation last night, and it was around financial literacy and things that you can do to continue to build financially outside of, hey, I got 7 roofs on the books this week.
Right.
Like, what can you do to better position yourself, your family, for the long term, to make money, to have resources, and build an empire? And it resonated with me, and I think it'll help a lot of people that are watching today. So, balls in your court. What are some of the things that you do or have done, aside from putting money into a checking and savings account, that has helped you realize more money?
Yeah, I think I feel like there's so much content and there's so much stuff out there about making the money. But once you make the money, you become a little bit successful, right? Have a little bit of freedom. What do you actually do with the money, and how do you park it, right? Like, there's the taxation side where it's like, hey, I need to learn about taxes and how the tax codes work. And then there's like the investment side. How do I invest money, short-term, long-term? It's kind of like content, right? Like, I'm making short-term content for one reason, long-form content for another reason. And the way you use the money and places you put the money all impact your future. So if we're saving money, like what I've done my whole life is real estate, right? Whether it's flipping houses, buying rentals, single family, commercial, industrial, have a little bit or have done them all. And they all have different pros and cons. Airbnbs, similar thing, right? Like, we both have an Airbnb. We both are part of that business model. And it's hard for people, I think, to get out of that roofer mindset where it's like, well, I'm going to buy a house and I'm going to Airbnb it, or I'm going to rent it, and I'm going to only make $10,000, $15,000 a year. Why don't I just sell one more roof and I can do the same thing? Right? Well, it's not about the cash flow. It's about buying assets. Somebody else is paying them down, and when they're paid off, you can refi them, or before they're paid off, you can refi them, take money out of the bank and go buy more. Or you have this little poker chip sitting there that you can cash in at any time, right? For 150, 200, 300, 600,000. And you accumulate more poker chips, and that's how that's done. And then there's the deeper stuff where we talk about like IRAs and whole life plans and term life plans and in different ways. So it's really about that, building that foundation, right? Like, what do you do with the money?
To that point, and those are all very good points. So I want to acknowledge that. You made an analogy that I think would help paint a very clear picture for the people watching, as far as a foundation, walls, roofs.
Well, so I always call like Paramount it's the foundation, right? It's if we think of building a house without a foundation, there's no point of putting walls or a roof on, right? So Paramount is my foundation. It's strong, it's healthy, everything's together. So because it's strong and healthy, now I can start building walls, right? Which are different investments and different ways of making more money or creating wealth. So I would put real estate in there. I would put some stock in there, 401k in there, IRAs in there. And then there's like the roof portion. The roof portion would be like whole life policies, where it's like, hey, I'm insuring everything under my roof, that if something happens to me, I have a will, I have a trust, I have my life insurance. My family's not going to, if something happened to me tomorrow, they're not going to starve. All the stuff in my bank account's not going to go to probate court. my employees can continue to work and continue to get paid, because if something happened to me tomorrow, even if I didn't die, if I was
Like incapacitated.
incapacitated, yeah. What happens to your company's money, right? Like, we're in one of the most dangerous industries there is. What if I'm just doing a simple inspection or just, climbing up on a roof to shoot content? Something happens to me and I can't make decisions. Well, how does that money get dispersed? Now, your employees are going to feel bad for a little while, right? And they're going to continue to work. But when the bank accounts are frozen and nobody can get into it because nobody else has a power of attorney or privileges to get in your bank account, what happens to your company? It's going to slowly, like, people are only going to work for free for feeling bad for so long, right?
Right.
So, you hear terrible stories about stuff happening to people, and they don't have their stuff in wills. They don't have their stuff in trust. And what I see is, you're building a house with a sand foundation, you're putting walls and a roof on it, and now that thing's tilting or breaks because the foundation was never corrected or built.
Huh. What made you think through this lens? Like, was there a specific instance that you can point to? Maybe content that you came across, or somebody taught you something where you're like, you know what, this is the lens I'm going to look through, and this is how I'm going to build out
Yeah,
my infrastructure.
my friend Keith, when we were young, he was always into like motivational stuff, and Tony Robbins' Money Masters and Robert Kiyosaki, Rich Dad Poor Dad. Like, reading those changed my life. And then I went to one of Tony Robbins' events, and I got to do the fire walk and stuff like that, and it just unlocked a lot of things. And then getting mentors, my real estate mentors, getting into the financial, my old accountant or bookkeeper, he was always like, oh, one day you're going to be Donald Trump, you're going to own all this. And he was a very animated guy. He's like, you better get your shit together and you better get your books right. It's like, yeah, JP, yeah, I get it, And he held me to it. And ever since him, I was like, I always had invoicing or bookkeepers in my office. My invoicing was always right. My taxes were always right. Like, I don't like paying taxes, but it's a privilege to pay them because I can go to the bank at any time and ask for anything and I can just get it, right? I don't have to go through a tedious process of them examining my whole life. Everything's together, here you go.
Right.
And that's the same with my will and my trust and all my stuff. It's in one binder. It's in a place where everybody knows it is. And if something was to happen, it's like, here's everything. This is everything in my life.
I feel like when you learn something new that you don't have subject matter expertise on, and the stakes are high, like the stuff that you're talking about, it can be overwhelming, and that can serve as an impediment to somebody's going from where they're at now to actually starting these things, because they don't know where to start, they don't know what to do, they don't know what the first step is. So what was your first step from the time that JP was like, you're going to be Trump, get your shit together, we're going to get there, and you started moving the needle? What was the first step that you took that helped move the needle in that direction?
I mean, definitely getting a financial advisor. That's a fiduciary, right? Fiduciaries are, the next level. And I don't want to get in too much into the weeds and these crazy definitions, but getting a financial advisor and start learning, right? Start learning what's going on and what a will and what a trust and what some of those things are. Because a lot of us have real estate, or we have, companies, we have stakes. Reading books about it. Tony Robbins' Money Master talks a lot about this kind of stuff, fiduciaries, how to put, money in different buckets. Rich Dad Poor Dad talks a lot about the different quadrants of your life where, I don't buy any liabilities with the income that I make. I only buy liabilities off the assets that generate cash flow. So reading some of those books and doing just a little bit of homework into that kind of that arena and taking it seriously, because when you're sitting with an attorney and it's you and your wife and you guys are talking about, hey, if you died, where would your kids go? Or if somebody, so one of your family members died, what would you guys do? It gets really real, right? Like emotions start happening in that room where, my wife's next to me crying, or at least tearing up thinking about death and this kind of a thing, but it's real, right?
Yeah.
It's real.
Could
So
happen.
putting yourself into that scenario, it really makes it real.
Hits a bit different.
Right. It's a bit different, right?
Yeah.
It's like, have you ever been driving on the road and you see a car crash happen right in front of you?
Yeah.
And no matter what you were doing that day, your emotions completely change in that second, right? Like your whole state of being changes. You go home, call everybody, make sure they're okay. And you have this instant sense of gratitude.
Right.
And it's kind of what it is. Like it changes your state a little bit. And it's like, we're not going to be young forever. We're not going to be on these roofs forever. We really got to plan for this kind of stuff.
Yeah. That makes a lot of sense. So you essentially only blow money or buy depreciating assets with money that's produced from income generating assets.
Exactly.
You said last night something that I absolutely love. You said, you'll never see me at a fucking ATM. Not once. I don't hit ATMs.
No, I don't.
Why not?
Because I plan and budget for what I'm doing. I mean, I don't know. I just don't.
So
If I'm at an ATM, there's got to be like a major problem.
I had a theory when I heard you say that, and it's like know thyself, right? I know myself. Maybe I have tendencies, and I'm going to create processes within my life to make sure that if I have a tendency, I'm not going to succumb to it if I don't want to, right? And I kind of thought that might have been the thing. Like maybe a long time ago, you're like, if I take money out of the ATM, then this might happen, then this might happen. So I'm not going to take money out of the fucking ATM.
Yeah, I've been there before. I remember when I was younger and doing things that weren't productive. I was at I think it was a New Year's party in a event center. And I knew that if you kept withdrawing $20 or $40 out of the ATM, it will just keep giving it to you if you do it fast enough.
Yeah.
And then you'll have to pay the fees later, but in that mindset, you don't care. So I ended up overdrawing my account by 20, by 20, by 20, by 20, and just kept hitting the ATM until it caught on and then cut me out, right? But I don't know. I think it's just coming from humble beginnings, like having nothing and like knowing that what rock bottom feels like and never wanting to go there again.
Yeah.
Because we all have those stories we can tell of our lives in not great places, right? I mean, I know we've shared stories about our lives.
Yeah. Look at it now, walking on a white beach.
Right. Well, at a conference, I'm
fiduciaries.
right. So I think, investing in understanding like the real estate market's cool. A lot of people will talk about my old videos and like, let's talk about real estate and stuff, which is cool. But like, what happens to all these assets and where are they being taxed? And are you paying capital gains or passing them to your kids? I mean, there's a lot of stuff without getting too into the weeds of, that kind of advice where I'd rather have my financial advisor and my attorney, my CPA next to me to make sure I'm not saying something wrong.
Sure.
But I think it's just important. I think it gets overlooked.
Yeah.
Right.
I agree. And also something worth noting, people sit here, real estate. Okay, I'm going to do real estate. I'm going to buy 5 single families in the next 3 years. That might not necessarily be what you want to do once you start doing it. And it's okay to pivot away from that strategy, reset goals. So in my mind is like kind of map out what are my options as far as where I want to park money. Maybe there's some tax benefit to putting in a 401k, a Roth IRA, a whole life policy as you were talking about. Maybe there's a better yield over here. You buy some CDs, you do some safe stuff, you do some aggressive stuff.
Yeah.
But I realized when I started buying real estate, I fucking hate it. I hate residential real estate.
Yeah, I sold all mine too. It's absolute nightmare. Biggest nightmare.
Finding a property management company that is dependable and you could rely on is the fucking worst. I mean, it's worse than you guys trying to find a marketing agency. I'm going to be 100% honest with you.
That's a fact.
Yes. So it's just been an ongoing headache. The Airbnb thing, it's worked out decent, but also, had a flood within a year of purchasing it where there wasn't a flood in 100 years.
Yeah.
So dealing with that headache. So I'm going through a claims process, guys. So if you got any tips, drop them in the comments below. So, you have a plan, then you get punched in the mouth, right? And that's when everyone has a plan until that happens. Now you're trying to figure out where do we go from here? But there are so many different opportunities and ways and that aren't obvious if you have somebody who is a professional, like a financial advisor, a good CPA, good attorneys for wills, estates, trusts, where you can protect yourself, you can protect your family, you can build a secure net for everybody that you wouldn't otherwise know if you didn't take that first step.
Yeah, and learning, like we put so much into learning how to get leads and KPIs and how to train salespeople and sales processes. Like we're spending so much time into that, but it's like, what about the other stuff, right? Like the dark stuff on the side. And I think that's just a big thing that's missed, right? Like let's chase opportunity, but now let's not protect our foundation. It's kind of backwards. And until you're in the position where you need it, it's just behind you,
It's the gutters of the home. You got to have gutters.
Yeah, it's the gutters.
Carry the water away from the foundation.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Huh. I don't know. I try to help a lot of my guys, and I have my financial advisor come at least once a quarter and do a little presentation about, investing into the company, and we match. We do a lot of matching and encourage the investment side of the world. But I don't know, it's always a lot of go, right? And to stop and think like, hey, everything that we're building is very vulnerable unless we protect it and we build this strong foundation.
Yeah, and I think that not only is it worth looking into, like for you and your family, but to your point about exposing people that otherwise might not be thinking about that stuff to it within your company, it really shows that you care.
Yeah.
And you want to give them the best life for them and their family. Also, one of the things that when I was like 21, 22, I started contributing to my 401k. One of the things that made me do it was doing like a retirement calculator.
Yeah.
How much am I going to need to retire? If I start investing this now at this annual yield, what does that look like in 46 years when I retire, or
Right.
42 years? And you'd be surprised. It's not what you think. So I feel as if a lot of people get kind of defeated if they think, okay, I can only put away $100 a month or $150 a month or $300 a month. But when that shit starts to compound over time,
Yeah.
it's a lot of money.
And the power of compounding, and Tony Robbins' Money Masters, I keep going back to that because that's really
There'll be a link down in the description.
Or in my thoughts, but he talks about the power of compounding. If you look at an investment and it's like, hey, it's 7%, is the average percentage per year. If we're getting 7%, well, every time I put $100 in, I get $7. That's not that attractive. That's not sexy, right? But if you start compounding that, where it's like, okay, now it's 107, now that compounds, now it's 100, and
16, or
you keep doing the math, right? And it compounds over time. Then you have something that's substantial. And I know in roofing world, especially, it's hard to, because we make, and it's not just the money we make, but it's the revenue that we can do and how fast we can do it if you're running a solid company, right?
Yeah.
So it's like, again, back to the Airbnbs, I'm going to buy a $400,000, $500,000 Airbnb. I'm going to make all this money. And you're not really going to create cash flow off one. Now, when you get into 10 and 15, sure. But still, somebody else is paying down that poker chip where you can turn in that $400,000 house in any time, and it's free.
Right.
So it's a little bit of like bending the mind to, here's our quick form is keep doing more roofs. Here's our long form is create this.
It's so tough when you're making such substantial, large sums of money in a day, 2 days, a week.
Well, you think you are because
Right.
it's relative, right? Like,
Of course.
if you go talk to somebody that's super successful, you're making peanuts, right? They wouldn't even think about going to sell a roof to make $5,000 in a day because it's not worth their time.
Right.
So it's very relative.
It is.
So when guys are doing a couple million and they show up in a nice car or sporting nice clothes, I did this. I made this mistake. I don't know if I've ever told this story. So when I was a sub, I was still making good money, but I ended up buying a brand new 2011 Cadillac ATS. And I had no business buying it. My house was like 800 square foot, but I had this nice brand new black Cadillac. And I pulled up to this roofing conference, which was just one in my local city, bumping music. I was young. I had a Cadillac cigar in my mouth. I thought I was Rick Ross, right? And one of the guys that I respected that runs a bigger company, he's like, who are you trying to impress? He's like, like all of us can buy that. Like, and I just, the way he said it, like, I don't know how he said it, but it's like, if Donald Trump came and parked a plane right here, like we'd be impressed. But if like Bill Gates and Elton or Elon Musk were all standing here, I'd be like, oh, nice plane. No big deal, right? Like it's all relative.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense.
So it's like, where are you going and where do you want to go? What does your life look like? Like that legacy stuff, right? Like what do you want it to look like? And then how do we get there and protect it every step of the way? It's like you wouldn't put on a roof without a project manager or someone there or someone you trust to make sure that the job looks right.
You shouldn't.
You shouldn't, right?
Yeah.
So why would you do that? I don't know.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense.
Kind of a ramble. I don't know if it made too much sense.
No, that makes a ton of sense. So go out there, find somebody who's going to make you feel stupid for the dumb choices you're making.
Right.
So then that'll motivate you to make changes in your behavior, and then you'll be better.
Right. It's like those little things that happen in your life where it's like, oh, maybe I was a dumbass. And then the next day you think about it and think about it. I don't know.
Damn it, she was right.
Yeah.
Well, man, this was a good one. I appreciate you spending some time with us.
Yeah, no, that was awesome, dude.
All right, brother.